excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity, Amanda, and looking forward to share with you some of the fundamentals of creating a market transformation plan, and I'll put together a package that go through some of the foundational elements of kind of thinking through how you want to transform the market that you want to address and enter. And these ideas and concepts will help you go through your application as you prepare in the next few weeks. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. So just a quick background on myself, where I come from, where I've learned both kind of technology management and business management in addition to entrepreneurship. And some of those experiences that influence my thinking that I'll share in this package. I've been in the industry for over 27 years, both in large companies, semiconductor, industrial, as well as in venture-backed startups in clean tech. And I've had a variety of roles, starting out as an engineer many years ago and moving into more managerial roles, both on the technology side, the commercial side, and also heading up a startup company. And I do think that the skills that matter the most as an entrepreneur, as you're trying to launch your startup, enter a market and expand into a variety of segments. I think a customer discovery mindset, agility, sort of deep listening, clear communication, and critical thinking matter a lot. In terms of education, I'm a trained engineer, material scientist. I also have a degree in business administration. For learning objectives for today's session, I have created a list that aligns with the requirements that were in the SETO webinar and what they're looking for in your application to communicate your plan for transforming the market you're targeting. So what I want to go through is some very kind of foundational level definitions and templates for how to think about market transformation, namely market structure and analysis, the importance and the stage in which you do this as you plan out your journey, understanding the significance of market segmentation to identify your target market, some critical product development and marketing concepts, including competitor analysis, distribution channels, barriers to entry when entering a new market, kind of thinking through launch plans, product marketing, business model financing, and commercialization timeline. So it's a fairly lengthy and comprehensive list. I'm going to touch on each one of them, and you can deep dive on your own or ask me questions later on any particular one of these. Before we start, I do want to share that when I've reviewed applications, it's very apparent when an application is strong, and typically the basic elements of a strong application are that the applicant has put an effort to put together first an organized and a clean application, so it's very readable and it's written in business English, if you will, so it balances both the technical side and the commercial or business aspects of what you're trying to commercialize. So those two are very important, and the level of kind of thought and analysis that has gone into kind of thinking about your market, how it's structured, how are you going to enter it, and deal with competition, so on and so forth. So I wanted to put it out here first before we get into the details, that the applications that are strong are clear, clean, analytical, and very well balanced. And I want to start out with market timing. It is a very sort of crucial external element on whether a startup will succeed or not. And as you can see, for solar startups, there's almost been no better time in the US and in the world to be a solar entrepreneur. This is a data chart that I picked up from New York Times in an article that was published on how quickly solar has become an important power generating source, as you can see by numbers. In 2023, almost 200 terawatt hours of generating capacity. And worldwide, there's projections of over $1.5 trillion being spent on clean tech. 23% of electricity is expected to come from renewable sources, which is a really, really big jump from 10 years ago. So great start, or great environment rather, market timing for your venture launch. So I'd like to start out with just defining market structure. Like businesses, like technologies, markets have structure. They're usually, market is defined as a means for exchanging goods and services that take place between buyers and sellers. So it can be a place, a physical place where you're buying and selling goods. It can be, a digital medium, so on and so forth. But it is a mechanism by which buyers and sellers exchange goods and services. Typically, market structure is characterized by how different industries within a market, say US or Canada, China, and industries within these markets compete, the degree of competition and how fair it is, allowing new entrants to thrive. There are some markets where it's a monopoly, one firm dominates, and it's very hard for new entrants to gain a foothold in their market, or a duopoly or an oligopoly. And there are laws to make sure that there is fair competition, so that countries can encourage innovation and startups can launch new products and consumers can enjoy their benefits. So it's important to sort of step back and think about, how is the market structured? In your case, the solar market today in the US or Europe, wherever you're trying to launch. And in your applications, you should spend a little time in that section articulating your understanding about the market you're trying to get into, in terms of how many companies operate. Is it fragmented and saturated? Therefore, hard for you to sort of make big profits over the long run? Is it highly competitive, dominated by a few big players, i.e. a red ocean, very competitive, cutthroat? Or is it a new market or a blue ocean? It's a white space for you to capture. So just that's just a little bit on market structure. Here is another sort of, classic chart out of the book Innovator's Dilemma. It was written by a business guru named Clay Christensen, and this is one definition on how to think about transforming markets, and I'll walk you through briefly some examples. So what you're looking at is, on the y-axis, it's technology performance over time. And if we just look at this part of the graph, there are two arrows. Essentially, the pace of technology progress over time and the ability of consumers to absorb that. And what big companies do is they invest in technology so much that sometimes they overshoot. The customers can't really absorb all the benefits. They pay a lot for it, but they're not able to use all the benefits because it's overserving their needs. So what happens is some startups come in at the low end of the market, introduce lower cost, clunky products at the low end of the market, but there is a group of customers that can pay for them because they're more affordable and they don't have to be best in class. And these companies capture a segment of that market that was overserved. And slowly over time, they move up this trajectory and they defeat the incumbents, the established players. So that's one way of transforming the market. It's called low-end disruption. And I can give you some real-life examples of companies like Walmart and Target. Over time, last 20 years, they disrupted department stores because they cater to a mass market of customers that were ready to buy branded goods at a lower price. There's another kind of market transformation phenomena or disruption that can take place, and that's along this green trajectory, again, performance over time. And this is a case where a company or a startup creates a new segment in an existing market to an underserved customer base, and it slowly improves in quality till the dominant technology or the dominant company is obsolete. And sort of the biggest examples of this phenomenon is, the emergence of personal computers and smartphones. If you think back in time, computing power was in mainframes manufactured by IBMs, and one mainframe would cost about $2 million. It was very hard to access by, the large majority of consumers. But the advent and invention of personal computer brought that price point to 2000, probably 20 years, 30 years ago. They were clunky, but they performed computing tasks. Same thing with the smartphone. But that type of disruption is called a new market disruption, and it does transform a market. So I wanted to sort of lay this out as a definition and an example for you to think about on what market transformation entails. Now let's drop, let's sort of zoom into your startup and kind of how you would think about analysis, planning, and tactics to go out into the market and penetrate it, transform it. And I wanted to offer this as sort of a staged process where you have to spend time kind of thinking through, what is the environment you're entering in, what are the customer needs, what's the size of the market, do research, what are the customer insights in terms of, needs, personas, willingness to pay, so on and so forth. Segmentation, and we'll get into this more later on, and then competitor analysis. And this is all sort of lumped into one big column of market planning. Once you have that information, a lot of desktop exercises, some customer discovery, then you can start sort of mapping out your strategy or your operating plan on how you're going to win in this marketplace, how you're going to target the customers who you think need your product and are positioned to pay for it, and then your tactics. This is all about, developing your product, launching it, pricing it, promoting it, and distributing it. Next, I wanted to spend a little time talking about market sizing. The standard way of cutting your market is what's known as TAM, SAM, SOM, and a term that I picked up from a friend called MOM, which is the most obtainable market. And for your purposes, this would be the most important first one to tackle. But when you're quantitatively sizing your market, you start out with a large pool of customers that are potentially applicable to the product that you're developing. But within that, there is a serviceable available market, the market that you can over time service if you had the infrastructure and the reach. You take a cut of that, and there's the serviceable obtainable market. And this is where customers are actually willing to pay for your product. And these are the right customers that you want to start out with. And even within that, the most reachable is, you know, in your early stage of the venture, this is the most obtainable. These are customers that are either within your region or they are in extreme need of your product, that they will most definitely pay for your first iteration of product or service. So that's just a little bit of the hierarchy of how you size your market. Segmentation is the technique by which you come up with those, you know, 4 classifications. So just graphically, if you can think about a market made up of a variety of customers, in segmentation exercise, what you would do is you apply filters to separate out the blue, the red, and the yellow by some common characteristics. And the characteristic that becomes your target market is the one that matches the most with your company's and your products' value proposition. And when you're applying, make sure that in your market analysis or your commercialization section, you explain the rationale of how you arrived at that target market. And that is very important, rather than just saying you are targeting, you know, utilities, scale, solar, you know, that are investing in innovation in Arizona. You have to explain how you reach that conclusion. And I feel that rationale is what separates strong applications from moderate applications. And initially, like I said, the most obtainable market is the smallest sliver of a segment of customers that are desperate and will pay for your product. Another question that does get asked in applications, or something that you definitely want to think through when you are explaining your market plan, is how you've comprehended the various barriers to entering a market. And for that, you should think about, you know, this graphic. It is typically used, it's called Michael Porter's 5 forces, and it's a very simple graphic that represents how companies compete within a given industry. And they are tackling threat of substitutes, bargaining power of customers or buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, and threat of new entrants. And this is the startup world. And the natural barriers for new entrants are high R&D costs, economies of scale. You don't have the volume to be able to lower your cost of production, geographical reach. Other barriers compared to larger players can include, you know, brand loyalty of existing customers of those companies that you're trying to take over, vertical integration, so, you know, access to supply chain, equipment, so on and so forth. The ability to make your product in-house is what that means, and talent. So kind of think through what your barriers of entry are, so you are mindful of what you're dealing with, and then how are you going to sort of overcome them as you launch your product. And very kind of close concept of barriers to entry is competitor analysis. And like I said, analyzing and knowing your competition is essential to your startup strategy and positioning. And your competition includes not only companies that have very similar products to yours in your target segment, but also different products that do the same job that the customer is trying to do. So as an example, I just wanted to give you a template here on the right side. And a typical competitor analysis looks like this. You have the various traits of both internal and external, so product functionality, cost of the product, market access, brand recognition, operational strength. And you compare your startup with a couple of other companies in market segment 1. And if you're trying to go to 2 market segments, then you want to make sure that you're analyzing competition in both of those segments. Another very critical part, we're moving on to now customer problems. So we talked about competition. Now let's kind of focus on customers. I feel like the hallmark of great applications, great business cases, is how clear the entrepreneur expresses and understands the customer, the problem the customer is trying to solve. And this is another great sign of a great application. And one way to kind of think about deconstructing the problem is this concept of getting a customer's job done. And it helps to think about a situation that a customer finds him or herself in, kind of expanding on that situation by understanding when that occurs, what's the motivation of the customer to try and sort of hire a product so he or she can get an expected outcome or a job done. A lot of segmentation and market analysis happens through sort of role identification or persona and behavioral definition. But in addition to that, I think if you zoom out, it gives you a more comprehensive understanding of your customer problem. And I'll give you a very quick example. It's personal, consumer example. Say I have a teenage daughter that is going to be of driving age, and I'm looking to buy a car. And I am looking for a car that will make me feel at peace. And if you deconstruct that customer problem or the desire to hire a car, it's when a parent has a teenage child that's going to be of driving age. Motivation is that I want to buy a car so that she can go drive and relieve me of driving duties, but I also want to make sure that I'm at peace and she's in a vehicle that will not cause any safety issues. So what you want to do is, again, in addition to psychographics or demographics, you want to focus on the situation in which the purchase occurs, and it'll give you a lot more nuanced understanding of your customer problem. Product development. I want to give this sort of a little different emphasis from having your product idea. This is more about you have a product, but the process of which you'll go by validating that product, developing an MVP, how you go and prototype and iterate on that product. So it is the process of building the initial prototype, improving it based on customer discovery, and then releasing it via a launch, a very systematic planned launch to the market, and then measuring the success of that product through the rate at which it is getting adopted, usability of that product, how customers use it. So you are seeing and witnessing the product as it's being used in the hands of the customer in their daily lives. So you can expand or actually improve the feature functionality, the user experience of that product, and the sort of the holy grail is the lovability of that product. And, you know, my kind of everyday example is AirPods. Can't live with that device. So you want to kind of aim for lovability, but you start with a MVP, and then you use this sort of iterative process, customer requirement gathering, you know, quick sketch of a design, prototype, building a product, launching it in a pilot, and then evaluating it. And as you are going through that process, you will also be able to hone in to your value proposition. You initially will have a value proposition hypothesis, but as you observe customers that are using it and get feedback, you'll be able to fine-tune your value proposition. Value proposition is another sort of foundational pillar of strategy, you know, company product positioning, and how you will price and capture revenue. Distribution channel. In your application, this is another aspect where you want to kind of think through your route to market. Okay, analyze your situation in terms of your reach to the end consumer, whether you are able to go direct to the customer or you need an intermediary, i.e. a wholesaler or reseller, to get to that end customer, because currently you don't have the infrastructure or the access to get to the customer. It will require investment. So you may choose that initially you'll use a distributor because you want to avoid costs, or go direct to the customer. And here is your opportunity to kind of talk about the infrastructure cost and the requirements, and, you know, explain your choices on how you will distribute your product to the market. Real quick, you should be able to articulate your product marketing plans, and the key component of product marketing plans include demonstrating a clear understanding of, you know, various dimensions of customer needs. Like we talked about earlier, articulate the value proposition. I offer here a very kind of, you know, very simple template to be able to construct your value prop statement, and make sure that it's relevant, differentiated, and credible. Determine your product positioning. Here, the keyword here is differentiation. You want to point out why your offering is unique and what is the key message that you are going to choose that resonates with the customers as you start to communicate the value of your products or service to your customers, to the market, and generally drive the awareness of your brand. And then tactics around launch planning, where you're going to promote your product. So this is the place of the 4 Ps of marketing, and then ongoing long-term marketing strategies. Real quickly, business model, and, you know, another very critical component of the application. It's all about how you will make money. So articulating and clarifying your sources of revenue, whether it's an annual service, it's a part sale, you know, or you have an additional offering where you're going to train your customers initially for a one-time cost to use your product. So identify your, you know, single or multiple revenue streams, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And the nature of the transaction. Is it a pay-as-you-go model, or is it an annual contract? And then, very importantly, communicate your pricing strategies so it relays how you're going to capture the value that you have created for the customer. And this is very important for entrepreneurs to know that you are, say, for example, creating $100 in additional revenue for your customer because they are now using your product, and you want to target a cut of that additional revenue that you will capture back, say 20% or $20. and negotiate that pricing strategy with your initial customers. And you want to clarify this in your application. Financials, another, foundational component of your application. And I wanted to share a template that I really like from Arizona Commerce Authority. They've used this in the Innovation Challenge. And it's a pro forma template, but it forces you to think about the various components of your financial plan. And this will be on the deck, so you can kind of read through it, but a 5-year pro forma to kind of think through how you're going to go to your customer base from 2 customers, 5 customers, 40, 100, so on and so forth, how many you expect to churn, drop out. Initially, the number should be high, and you should be able to control it over time or reduce it. The number of units sold, the average selling price, gross margins. You want to think about expenses. And this is sometimes a hard part for entrepreneurs, I feel, as I've helped some of them through these applications, thinking through and projecting expenses that you will need to incur, both commercial and operational, to be able to produce and sell your goods in the market. How many people you have to hire, expenses for conferences, content, market research, so on and so forth. So you want to be able to kind of think through that and provide it as part of your application. And then other metrics such as the operating margins, revenue over time, funding required, so on and so forth. Commercialization timeline. This is a very simple depiction of important elements and milestones of your commercialization path or your journey from idea to launch and to market expansion. And just there's no kind of particular preference on what's on the upper side of the arrow versus the downside. But once you have the idea, you want to make sure the proof of concept is validated through a third party, customer discovery and market assessment. And you should be able to project based on the resources you have on how long each one of these will take, and be able to provide a time-based path to market. And in conclusion and summary, I'd like to say what you want to do first and foremost as you write out your application is make sure that it's cleanly written, well organized, and readable. It balances both technical and market analysis, as well as a clear projection of your financials and operating plan. In terms of the commercialization elements, we talked about clear customer problem definition, making sure you're doing the segmentation properly to identify the right customer group. And I think another important element here is to sometimes startups get stuck in sort of analysis paralysis, but as soon as you have a hypothesis of a target segment, go out and start interviewing customer to validate that hypothesis versus spending 9 months to do the segmentation and customer discovery, nailing the use case. And this is all about kind of observing the customer in the field, understanding your external environment, so you are clear on your not only your competition, but also how you're differentiated and why customers are willing to pay for your better product or service, and making sure that you get your business model right. And while we covered just the revenue streams of the business model is a more holistic concept. It is sort of the various levers of your business and how all of them come together to deliver value to your customer, kind of capture value, put it back in your business, and then kind of oil that engine to expand your venture and your market.